just nailing the turns on Bitcoin. The trend lines, the support and resistance levels have been absolutely incredible. These divergences on the Bitcoin 4-hour chart have been nailing the turns as well. Bitcoin's forming the bull flag, and again here, if we exclude these levels here, and you can see it on the daily chart if you watch the video all the way through, and I recommend you watch the video all the way through. You want to know what's going on, because Bitcoin is in a bottoming process and then it's going to go higher. But I think that, again, I've been talking about this divergence. We had this little divergence right here form in the smaller time frames, but right here so far with this low here and here we have a higher low. I think we could take out these lows right here. And again, remember the RSI, it doesn't look at these shadows. I think you'll end up forming a divergence coming down into this area, in all likelihood taking this level out, but probably staying above the support zone here. And again, I think you get this divergence going on. Okay, and I think we're going to break this trend line right here. And, you know, I think you're going to come down here, maybe you take it out and get a higher low like that, or even come down into the support zone, but something like that, probably something like that right there, like that, or again, over a few days. And then I think you're going to come break out, and then I think it's going to be done and the consolidation will complete. But we've had the inauguration day peak, we had the DeepSeek sell-off, the tariff sell-off, we got that death cross and more volatility. I think Bitcoin's in a bottoming process. Now, if we come down here and into this lower end right here, and again, possibly forming a divergence with this low right here, confirmation of a higher low if we don't, the Bitcoin ETF IBIT will fill the gap, and I think it will bottom out. That's what I think is going to happen. Let me just show you that. The 60-minute chart, almost equivalent to this 4-hour chart. The IBIT 60-minute chart, and again here we had some divergences develop in the more recent price action. I think with this low right here, we're going to form a larger divergence. We had the divergence with these lows right here, and in the more recent price action. I think we're coming down here to fill the gap here at 53.22. This is the gap with the inflation data from the January release. I was predicting we were going to get a Bitcoin bottom and a stock market bottom. Talking about that on January 9th and 10th, and we got that Bitcoin bottom on the 13th. Warned you about the trend line. We went down, we hit it. I was talking about it right here, predicting this bounce. I told you we were going to come back and either get a higher low or lower low, and if we got the lower low, we were going to hit my trend line, mark a Bitcoin bottom, and it did, and we formed this bullish divergence on the RSI and other indicators. I think that, again, you've got from this trend line right here, again, an upper boundary of the bullish falling wedge. I think we're coming down here. Maybe we overthrow it a little bit and test this low, but I think the January 13th low is going to hold. And then I think you're going to see a breakout of the bullish falling wedge. But we may get a bottoming tail like what we've seen with the Bitcoin price action at the January low. You could see that over here on the Bitcoin ETF chart. We got a bottoming tail and a hammer, and the bottoming tail that we saw with surrounding the sell-off with the tariffs on Mexico and Canada. Again, I think Bitcoin's in a bottoming process, and I think that when we fill this gap right here at 53.22, I think we're going to see a bottom in this area. And again, the slower boundary might be adjusted a little bit, but or we may blow through it and get a bottoming tail, whatever. But I think you got a bullish falling wedge, in my opinion. Please support the channel with the link directly below. That allows me to be able to provide you this information. I don't want to send you to exchanges that want to get you all leveraged up to wipe you out. So I don't have sponsors. They contact me, I turn them down. I don't want to do that. Just ask that you partner with me and support the channel. Follow the link below. It'll take you to a secured site and you can donate any amount you want. If you can step up to the plate and help out, I would really, really appreciate that. Also, tomorrow I might do another video if I think that we have a bottoming signal taking place, but I do think we're going to go lower. Bitcoin, I think that'll drag IBIT here down. I'm going to really show you some very important things. You've really got to watch the video all the way through to understand why we're about to bottom and why we're about to go make new all-time highs after that. Bitcoin's going to top. Nobody will believe it's a top. So as I'm making the video, Bitcoin's dropping. We're down 0.65% at the moment. Bitcoin's dropped back below 96,000. Again, I'm expecting we're going back to this trend line right here and this support level. It was our trend line in the log, with the log scaling that allowed us to call that day of that bottom, again, the topping tail, the day of the top of December, and again, because of hitting the trend line, and then we hit it again here, rallying to 8%. And again, I told you we're going to sell back down back test the bull flag. Everybody told us, no, it's a head and shoulders. The people that told us that the sell-off wasn't going to happen, telling us it's a head and shoulders and Bitcoin's going to go lower. And again, they weren't bearish up here, but they sure were down here, and that's why I called a bottom. And then I told you we were going to rally surrounding ahead of Inauguration Day. We peaked on Inauguration Day exactly as I told you. I told you we'd break out with the bull flag. And then back testing, I told you we're going to come back here, back test and get a Fibonacci retracement, test this level. We did that here. Probably this high is going to hold, or we'll move back just below it into the support zone. I don't think we take out the January low, as I've been saying. And again, just absolutely nailing the swing moves. If you pay attention to the support and resistance, the bearish signals came up here. The bullish signals came here, as we talked about. The bearish signals up here again, as we talked about. And then now I think we're consolidating, building momentum, forming the bullish falling wedge. And I think we're going to go, and we're going to move to take out this level, move towards that maybe 115 to 117,000 levels of resistance. If we clear it, you're likely on your way to the 125 to 135, 136,000 area. Those next levels of resistance in the weekly time frame. Are you picking up what I'm throwing down? Now you got horizontal support here. You got your 78.6 Fibonacci. You've got this lower boundary of the bull flag. Again, we could even violate it and go into the support zone. Like I said, January low is likely going to hold. Here we have this support level right here. We have this trend line coming in down here. So again, I think you could drop down into test this level just above it. 92, 93,000, or just below it, just under this level right here, into the support level. What is this, 89,000 or so, this low right here, and this low right here, that 91,000 area, I believe it was. So again, key support, I think you're going to bottom. If I zoom out, this is our log scaling right here. This is a trend line. It was the linear trend line that we bounced off at the January low, but this is a trend line I've been watching in the log, with the log scaling here in the daily time frame from the higher low at 52,000, where we bottomed out at Bitcoin's average price. You can see it right there. And then we got that higher low surrounding our 100 period moving average. This trend line is pointing right into a confluence of support, horizontal support, the lower boundary of the bull flag and the upper boundary of the lower boundary of the bullish falling wedge, the upper boundary of the bull flag. Just a confluence of support, or 78.6 Fibonacci. This is where I think we're going to consolidate, break out, I think get the final blow off top, the final phase of the blow off top. It's an important trend line in my mind. I think Bitcoin's going to peak out in April. Again, we've had a delay with the reciprocal tariffs, okay? And Wall Street is celebrating that, and Bitcoin will eventually celebrate that too, and rally with the tax cuts. Again, as I said, maybe some other catalysts with Bitcoin as well. Take us up to the trend line I'm looking at. But again, just want to show you this zooming out. Again, look at the last several years. The April to September area. It was an April peak with our first 2021 peak. Sold off 55%. Went back up and tested the high, went slightly higher. Ended up getting a bigger sell-off. Look at where the real big sell-off came with Bitcoin. Look at where it came. April to September. Look at that. April to September. Not a good time for the seasonality with Bitcoin. Again, periods aren't always perfect. Look at the October to December. October to December, we had a rally initially, but then we ended up giving it back. You've been consistent over the last 4 years with the April to September sell-off. I think you're going to get it again. I think you're going to rally up into new highs, hit my trend line, and then I think you're going to get the start of the next bearish phase for Bitcoin that's going to begin to price in the recession being told isn't going to happen, and I think you're going to see this. But look at this. This is why I believe Bitcoin's going to peak in April. Look at this. Here, over here. Look at over here. We had the sell-off here and the sell-off here. We went sideways. Look at over here after January to March rally here. Again, we sold off April to September by 0.33%, or I'm sorry, by 33%, pardon me. Bitcoin lost 1/3 of its value during that time. And over here, again, these sharp declines, 55% and whatever it was from here to here. But this whole thing was 78%. And this was a majority of that move downward. Seasonality is not perfect, but I'm just pointing out that over the last 4 years, Bitcoin's had a very bearish season and price action between April and September. I think that's going to create a top, and I think you're going to see a 50% drop or so during that period. When Bitcoin peaked over here, it dropped real fast, 52% in a couple of months, and then we had the counter trend. I think you're going to see something similar. That's why, and let me just zoom in here. I wanted to zoom out because I wanted to show you, I think this is really important here. Pointed out in the recent history with the January to March level, which we're in right now in the first quarter, you tend to have this volatility, but you go and end it with new highs. And again, we had that over here 2 years ago. We had it last year, some volatility in January and February, and by the end of March, you end up higher, but then you go into those sell-offs. So I think that we'll likely see that. We'll likely push up into my trend line, peak. Nobody's going to think it's a peak, and then we're going to get this April to September period. And what's coming in April? What's coming in April? Talking about April 1st, maybe a little bit after that, we're going to get the inflation data on April 10th for the CPI. What's coming in April? The implementing of the reciprocal tariffs. That's what's coming. So I think that the stock market and Bitcoin rally with the tax cuts and maybe some other positive news. I think we're going to get the inflation freak out. You're going to see the inflation data. Why do I keep saying the inflation data is going to go higher? Why did I predict that correctly? Because I look at the M2 money supply. What is it doing? It's rising. Why is it rising? Because it's telling us that inflation is going to tick back up. With the increase in the M2 money supply and the $2.2 trillion that we just got in the last year of the Biden administration, $2.2 trillion in government deficit spending, this is all going to create inflation. So the narrative's going to be, oh, the Fed can't cut, inflation's going higher, get our inflation freak out, the trade war and all the rest of it. So the market believes false things, like tariffs cause inflation, like we're going to have a soft landing out of the Fed. This is the kind of stuff the herd believes. So again, I remain bullish on Bitcoin. We're going higher, but then we're going to top, and nobody's going to think it's a top. But I think this was very helpful looking at these periods of seasonality for Bitcoin. I think the sell-off in April to September is coming. And for being penciled in, anyways, for the reciprocal tariffs to be starting is April 1st. And maybe, again, it might take them a little bit longer, but we could begin to start to see some. Necessarily going to roll them all out at the same time, starting with the countries that have the largest trade deficits with the United States first. See, again, UK and the European Union and different folks to respond to all this. Now, again, I'm not a fan of Trump's tariffs. I'm not a fan of the tariffs in Europe. Any other place. Funny, the people that worst offenders with tariffs, like in Europe, are so feigning outrage at the tariffs that the United States is slapping on them, but yet their tariffs in Euroland are more egregious than what the United States has. It's absolutely amazing. People that want to feign outrage, all they got to do is just remove their tariffs and the United States won't do it. I felt this was really helpful information. This is why I'm predicting that we're going to see a peak likely in March or April with Bitcoin. Well, I hope everyone had a good weekend. My name is Ron, and these are my Bitcoin updates. And today I'm going to just continue to review my trading strategy and why I believe Bitcoin is going to make new all-time highs. You have a lot of people now starting to try to say we have a double top and that Bitcoin is now done peaking, and I don't think so. Again, my weekly signals remain bullish, and I believe Bitcoin is likely headed towards 115 to 117,000 area next. If we clear that resistance, then I'm looking at for channel line, and that could take us as high as that 135,000, 136,000 area that I talked about in my last video. I shared some of my personal indicators with you in my last video. You might want to check that out. Well worth looking at that. We'll maybe take a look at a couple of those indicators here, but just real fast, this is what's going on. Again, everybody was telling us that there was no way Bitcoin was going down at the December top. I told you we hit a major trend line. We've got this topping tail right here on the daily chart. Two major trend lines in the weekly time frame. One with our our linear scaling in the weekly time frame. This trend line goes back to 2017. And again, if we exclude the shadows right here and connect it with the peak in 2021 there, the second 2021 peak, again, we went up, slammed right into it at 108,000, dropped down, and then we came right back up to that area and slammed into it again. And that's why I told you at those two peaks, again, we were going to get pullbacks. Our daily trend line in the daily time frame that we bounced off, and that's why I predicted the day of that bottom on the January low. But it was here that I told you we are going to reverse off of these levels and likely pull back before going higher. Now, if we can go higher, you have your 1618 expansion that comes in at 115,000, just under 115,500. That's the 115,000 area that I'm looking at, the 1.61 expansion. And then if we get above that, you have the trend line right here, right around maybe 117, possibly 118,000, depending on when we reach it. If we can clear that, then Bitcoin can go to the 1.78 at 125, and this is the linear scaling. The Fibonacci levels are different than the log scaling. I look at both. Most people don't. Valuable information from both. But again, if we can clear this trend line, you got your 1.618 expansion. Then you got your 1.76 expansion. You got this trend line. If you can clear this trend line, again, we'll probably move up towards this trend line and maybe stall a little bit, and then immediately go through it, or maybe consolidate quite a bit. But I still think we're going. If we just bust on through it, just consolidate a little bit right there, we could just bust on through it and keep going towards the 125 to 135, 136,000 area. These trend lines, again, really served us well in trading Bitcoin. It really, and again, this is where people got so at these highs, got so at the December, January, oh no, oh here we go. And I told you we were going to get these pullbacks. Now, again, I remain bullish and I think we're going higher, but I believe that we are forming minor wave 4, and that's why I believed that we were pulling back here, and that was correct. Again, this trend line helped me nail the top, the day of the top there for December and for January, which was Inauguration Day. The daily trend line on January 13th allowed me to the day of the bottom. So just nailing it with the support and resistance. It pays. It pays to watch support and resistance levels. You can really make some amazing calls if you pay attention to this stuff. Again, when you start getting at the tops, at the rallies, that's where the herd gets extremely bullish and complacent. And at the bottoms, they get very bearish. When we sold off, they weren't bearish at the December top, but at the January low, then they got very bearish. At these lows is where we're seeing the massive outflows on the Bitcoin ETFs. And again, that's marked at the bottom. So the massive inflows come up at these highs because the herd gets bullish at tops and they get bearish at bottoms. The way it works. We also turned off of our log trend line in the weekly time frame. Again, I talked about these trend lines at the time in great length of detail because I told you we were likely going to get a pullback here. And my personal belief is that it was wave 4, and I think that's correct. But if you take a look at the low here from the 2021 peaks, again, I told you it's pointing up here. We're likely going to stall at this level before going to this channel that I have in the log, with the log scaling here in the Bitcoin weekly time frame. So this is where I think we're headed. Now, depending on when we reach that, again, that's where I think Bitcoin's going to top, is when we come into contact with this line right here. And again, we may straddle along it for a little while, We did over here, look at these tops. You hit this level right here, you went down and you went back up, again, towards our 10-week moving average. You hit this level, you pull back towards the 10-week, and then you went a little bit higher. May see something like that. And I believe that in this minor wave 5, we have 5 subwaves developing, which I think that we're in the subwave 2 right now. And we're about to get the trend extension with the wave 3 and the 4 and the 5. And I think, you're going to see something like this probably going into March or April, because, again, April tends to be a negative seasonality for Bitcoin as far as recent history. It isn't always that way, but in the last 2 years, it has been. I think you're going to rally into the tariffs. I think what will give us a rally, again, hopes of Bitcoin reserves from the government. We have President Trump now trying to get through his tax cuts. Now, these are the tax cuts that extend the 2017 tax cuts. This is not the tax cuts, the additional tax cuts that he campaigned on, which are going to come later, which are the no tax, the middle class tax cuts. Remember the no tax on tips, the no tax on overtime, and the no tax on Social Security. These are middle class tax cuts, and Wall Street and the crypto community are likely going to celebrate that. That gives us the final higher. There may be some other catalysts involved as well, but I think that those two things will really help Bitcoin. Again, the crypto community likes President Trump won the election. That's why we had the election rally. They like he's pro-crypto. They like that he's appointing people that are in his administration that are pro-crypto. Wall Street hates Trump's tariffs because they falsely believe that they cause inflation. They do not. Tariffs before in the 2018 and 19, inflation went down, not up. We had the tariffs in the 1920s and 30s, 40% tariffs there in the 1920s, and then more tariffs there in the 1930s. Inflation did not go crazy. We actually had deflation. In the 1930s, we had the largest deflationary period in history. Did the tariffs make inflation happen? No, they didn't. So again, all this nonsense. Even kept the China tariffs in place, and again, inflation continued to drop from 2018 and 19 all the way to decline into 2020. Why didn't the Chinese tariffs make inflation go higher? It's just a bunch of nonsense. But believe you me, again, the media is going to do their best to convince us we're going to have a trade war, and possibly that might be the case, but so far it's not. But they're trying to convince us we have one right now. And then we have also the media that's going to do everything to tell us, and they're already doing so, and over the next 4 to 8 weeks, we're really going to get it, that we're going to have this massive increase in inflation because of Trump's tariffs, and it's going to be a trade war. And eventually, I think that's going to give us the inflation freakout up here with Bitcoin and with the stock market. S&P 500 has a very similar channel to what Bitcoin has. I think Trump's tax policies with the extension of the tax cuts and possibly Bitcoin reserves or maybe some other catalysts, some other things, help Bitcoin along the way to get us up here. But this is where if we can get above this trend line right here, which I think we're building momentum to do that, we're consolidating under it, I think we're going to get the final thrust up here. And when we come into contact, wherever we come into contact, that's where I think we're going to peak. And that could be as high right now at the moment because we've gone sideways in the 135, 136,000 area. I had a lower target, but look, we consolidated. We had the wave 4 here, and then it extended out, and we're just going sideways now as we begin the wave 5, the minor wave 5. We've really gone nowhere here since the head of the election, the rally ahead of the election there, and then just going sideways with the election rally. We've gone nowhere for months here. So again, that is likely going to take us to higher levels. Again, a number is not my target. This trend line is my target. And I think like hitting it over here, I think we're going to hit it again. Over here, we overthrew it. So again, could we see something like that and go a little higher? Sure. I remain bullish on Bitcoin. My signals in the weekly time frame remain bullish. And again, we had that breakout right here from the bull flag after selling off and dropping one third of the value, balancing off the 50-week moving average. We now have the breakout, and we've come up to this next level of resistance where I told you we'd stall out at, and I think that we're going to bottom here. And again, here's our 20-week moving average. Bitcoin follows that 20-week moving average. We might go a little bit lower to test it, as I've been predicting, to complete that bullish falling wedge. But I think you're likely going to try to bounce in this area, and you have major key horizontal support here. You can see that in the daily time frame. So I think we'll end up turning back up here and moving up into this area. So that's what I think is going on. Now, when we get up here, just like at these peaks in December and January, and the peak over here in March, and back over here in 2021, when we get up there, Bitcoin's likely going to top because we're moving towards recession, a recession that the Fed's telling us is going to happen, a recession that the herd and the experts are telling us, oh, no, we're getting a soft landing. Hey, I'm posting a video on my Ron Walker channel on YouTube, and I'll link that video. I'm going to be posting this video before that's released. Go through more recession indicators. I tackle about 4 more recession indicators, and I show you, look, hey, here's what the recession signals are saying. Bitcoin has never been through a real recessionary period when the stock market gets a bear market. When we had the recession in 2020, climbed for 3.5 weeks with the stock market and with Bitcoin, and then we bottomed. The government did QE 2.0, and then after that we had the government come out and pass out $5 trillion in stimulus checks, which has given us the inflation. QE is inflationary. What the Fed did, deficit spending, government deficit spending, that's what causes inflation, not tariffs. No one's moaning and complaining about that. 2024, right before the election, they artificially propped up the economy, doing $2.2 trillion in deficit spending. So again, inflation is going to go higher. It will be blamed on the tariffs, but the tariffs will not cause it. It is caused by what we just saw in the last year of the Biden administration, the massive deficit spending and the Fed policies. Fed policies, and there are several different policies that cause an increase in the money supply, which in turn creates inflation. The buying of the treasuries and mortgage-backed securities and all this stuff, that is inflationary. We're going to see what happens when Bitcoin gets a real recession and not one that is brief, because the Fed and the government meddling with the markets. And again, the stimulus is only going to make the next sell-off all that much worse. That's why Bitcoin is likely going to come back down and test the 2022 low and probably take it out and hit it. There's a major trend line just under it, and that's where Bitcoin is likely going to bottom out at with this next major decline. But again, I remain bullish. I think we're going up here. When we get up there, nobody's going to think it's a top. Again, I remember when the divergence is developed over here with this topic over here, I called the day of the top because we had a divergence on the RSI indicators in the daily time frame. We had the divergences in the weekly and the monthly time frame, and again, everybody was saying we're on our way higher, and we peaked out. We're going to see the same thing up here, and again, we had an immediate 52% drop. A rally formed a bear flag, and then the bottom fell out of Bitcoin. I remain bullish, but I think the bull market's going to be terminated up here, and when we get up here, no one's going to think it's a top. But again, be selling into the rally up at those levels, taking a short position near this trend line. Been making these, and by the way, these trend lines have been absolutely outstanding. Trading Bitcoin back and forth. Again, turning off the weekly trend lines, we bounced off a daily trend line. And I think we're going to bounce off another daily trend line I'm looking at with the log scaling right now, which I'll show you here in a second. I wanted to review this. I haven't reviewed this very carefully in the last several videos, but we talked about it in every single video back at the December and January tops there. And again, predicting that we would turn off this level as we rallied up into it. But this is where I think we're eventually headed. Again, the bears got very bearish at the January low, but look, we got an accumulation signal that, again, buyers were coming in. I told you we had dropped down to my trend line, and we tagged it beautifully on that log scaling, and that's where we bottomed out, got an accumulation, went back up, and we got another distribution signal at the January peak with Inauguration Day. And I told you that day we had a one-day reversal, rallied up 8%, reversed, and had a closed just above 0.5%. I think it was like 0.69 or 0.89% or something like that. And then I told you again, we're going to pull back and back test a bull flag. We've now done that. I think this is about to bottom out. And again, look at the midpoint of the channel here. I think we're going to get traction right here, just as it was resistance and resistance. And then again, eventually we got above it. Now it becomes support. But again, we got 2 weeks ago another accumulation signal with the tariff sell-off. So I think we're going higher and going up to that channel line where I think Bitcoin's going to top. Beautiful channels on Bitcoin. I think Bitcoin makes the most beautiful channels that I've ever seen. So again, the upper boundary remains my target level. Again, they're going to attempt to get this the extended 2017 tax cuts through here. They have a deadline by March 14th. They may extend that, but I think we're going to see that as part of the rally, and I think that's going to take us up to this channel line right here. And I think that could take Bitcoin because we've gone sideways for so long, I think that could take Bitcoin towards 135, 136,000 area. If we take our time higher, if we get there quickly, then lower. But the trend line is my target. But the accumulation and distribution signals here have done an outstanding job at telling us where the buyers and the sellers are coming in at. And I correctly predicted the tops here because of the trend lines in the weekly time frame and told you the days that they topped. And also correctly called these bottoms right here. And again, this support area helped me greatly along with the trend lines that I've talked about and horizontal support right here. But again, correctly calling the day of the January bottom, correctly calling the day here. This low very well could hold up. I told you we're going to come back and test it. We may get a higher low, but we may push into the support zone here. But I think you're probably going to get a higher low in that low 90,000, 92, 93,000 area in all likely. If you break it, you might hit 90,000 or the 91,000 range. And I think that's where we came in at that low there. Got key VWAP support and horizontal support. And then I think we're going to come back up here. We're going to try to get above this VWAP resistance and this overhead resistance and then clear the 109,000, 108,000 resistance zone. Signals have done an outstanding job in nailing the bottoms here recently with our VWAP support, volume weighted average price from these previous points, the breakout point and the 52,000 low and the higher low that's set up surrounding our 100 period moving average. Absolutely incredible signals. Now, Bitcoin turned off of the 20 period moving average and other things here, not seen here the 20 period, but the critical mass. We also turned off critical mass and it's bearish. I told you I think we're going back to test the support zone where I think Bitcoin is going to bottom. Complete a bullish falling wedge. Some momentum signals tried to turn back to bullish, but I told you I thought they would turn right back to bearish as we test the support levels here. So again, I continue to believe that we're coming down here for a test and then I think we're going to bottom in this area. But again, the momentum line turned bullish, turning right back to bearish. Again, look at for yesterday's bar, Sunday's bar, we get a sell signal here with the little arrow. We'll have trending signals, so short-term swing trending signals, bearish with our cloud and so forth. I think you're coming back into this area for a test, and then I think you're going to bottom. As I'm making the video, Bitcoin's continuing to drop. We're down 0.77%. Again, I've been predicting we come down to this lower boundary here, and again, I think you're forming a bull flag, backtesting I think you're forming a bullish falling wedge. Pardon me, backtesting the bull flag here. And again, look at all the support coming in here. Look at these little support areas, that horizontal support, again, helping me to call these bottoms as resistance, helped me call these tops and the topping tails. Look at the topping tails up here. That was, we slammed into those trend lines in the weekly time frame. So I think, again, we're coming down into this area, and I think you can bottom out in this area. Maybe we breach the lower boundary like we did over here. We come in deeper into the support zone here with the low here, the low here. But we've seen this 16.28% drop from the high that I predicted back over on Inauguration Day. I told you we were going to backtest and sell off. We did. And again, I think we're going to finish it up here. I think there's buyer interest in this area. Our 78.6 Fibonacci from this low to this high is right here at this area. And I think that's why you're probably going to get a higher low. That'd be my guess, but could be a slightly lower low into this low. But we had the January low, called the day of that bottom. Had the tariff sell-off low, called the day of that bottom. Stalled at our 10-period moving average. We talked about all of this stuff, and I told you again, often get a low, we're like right here, come back and test it. We have a low right here, you can come back and test it. And I think we're building momentum, consolidating to come over here and eventually clear this area, which I think is likely. But you have a buyer interest. Again, look at all the buyer interest at this support area. We're probably going to come down to it. There's going to be buyer interest, and that's probably going to mark the Bitcoin bottom. That's why my couple of videos I've been talking about a bottoming process for Bitcoin. The pullback that I predicted back up here on January 20th, I believe is about to come to a conclusion. So again, the buyers are going to come back up in here, and then I think we're going to go to new all-time highs, and I think we're going to get the final phase of the blow-off top, but then I think we'll peak. And again, like at the peak in 2021, nobody's going to think it's a top. Complacency set in, and if you take profits, the resistance levels I'm talking about when we reach the trend line, and attempt to flip the trade, then you're a dope. And again, human behavior never changes. The human emotions, fear and greed, always exist. That's why, again, over here, the herd, they were super bullish at these peaks, but they were very bearish down at these lows. And again, I think that we'll go get this final push down. And right now, I think I'm being proven correct with my bullish falling wedge. We did get rejection. Here's the 20 period. Do you see that 20 period, the blue line? That's where we got rejection. And we got a topping tail at that level too. I talked about that the day it happened. And again, that's why I'm predicting that we come back down here. But then I think we're going to bottom and we're going to go get that rally. So pretty amazing calls, pretty amazing signals. Just nailing the turns on Bitcoin. That's just 78.6 Fibonacci because it is coming in right here down in this area close to our lower boundary here for the bullish falling wedge. And again, maybe we violate that level and hit the support zone again. We'll see what happens, but we very well could get a higher low above this area.